welcome back to Metroid Zero Mission. We're headed back to No Fair. Now that we've got our new power grip ability, we'll be able to go up these types of ledges where we can grab onto the edge and pull ourselves up. Here's another difference between this game and the original, the original Metroid and every other Metroid game is if you run into those little tube guys, they'll, as far as I'm aware, infinitely respawn in every other Metroid game. However, in the original Metroid game, they'll only respawn for a little bit, and then they'll just basically say, fuck you, go away, go somewhere else. So you can't use them to regain all of your health, at least as far as I remember. I remember that being sort of one of, in addition to not knowing where I was going and sort of getting lost because of how long some of the corridors were, was the fact that you couldn't reliably rely on what I'm doing right now to restore your missiles or health. So you now see why I skipped this missile here in this corridor, this hallway, if you will. Because now that I have my pull-up ability, it makes trying to get this a lot easier. So, my first introduction to Metroid, or Samus, our main character, was I played the Game Boy version of well, it's the only version until the recent remake, but Metroid 2 was on the Game Boy, and it bridges the gap between Metroid 1 and Metroid Super Metroid, which is known as Metroid 3. Insofar as in Metroid 1, you're fighting you want to defeat Mother Brain and her subordinates, who are trying to use the control the Metroids, to some nefarious purpose. And Samus is sent to basically kill all the Metroids, and, because they're they're a nuisance to the galaxy, and of course, eliminate Mother Brain and her henchmen. In Metroid 2, you go to SR, I think it's SR 71, something like that, SR 98, and that's the planet of the Metroid, and you go there and essentially go there to wipe out the Metroid. So you kill, whatever Metroids that are alive on the planet, and in that version you run into not just the atypical Metroids you see in this game and Super Metroid, but you also get their upgraded versions, like which are named after Greek letters. I'm not as 100% sure, but I know there's, the original Metroids, there's the betas, the gammas, the deltas, epsilons. I think it goes up to epsilon. And I believe the epsilon is sort of when the Metroid reaches essentially the Queen alien version of itself. So now that I've gotten the most important blaster in the game, i.e. Ice Beam, Ice is good against Metroids. So It allows you to freeze them as well as damage them. So in Metroid 2, you don't actually have to worry about getting freeze beam. Because of the limited space of that game, you could only have one of your beam upgrades. So you could either have Ice Beam or Spazer or Wave Beam or Plasma Beam. And they would override each other. So you would initially get Ice Beam, but due to the nature of the limited memory, once you upgraded to the next one, either Wave Beam or Spazer, it would override it and you wouldn't have Ice Beam anymore. Just fine. In a way, it was fine. You could always go back and get Ice Beam if you wanted to, but it's such a backtrack, no one would ever do it. Or alternately, you would opt to get Phaser or Wave. Whereas in Super Metroid, everything stacks. So, and this remake, they stack as well. So, when I get Wave Beam later on, it'll stack with Ice Beam. So I'll have a frozen Ice Beam that I can use. The Metroid games are always fun because they're the ones that in some ways they were the good, like Super Metroid, Metroid 1. They restrict you enough, but they give you enough freedom if you're really good at the game to sequence break it, that they've become for a lot of people, they're the speed running one that I find the most interesting. Whereas the Mario ones are like, well, how can you exploit the Mario the engine the game runs in order to skip certain areas or sequences? Like, I think I mentioned this before, but as of like say 3 years ago, the speedrun strat for Super Mario Brothers 3 was to essentially double warp whistle your way to World 8, and then try to get what they call no hands. They're on the bridge. There's a well, I don't know. I don't remember if it's a 1 in 16 or 1/32 chance that you get a no hands on the bridge, and the hands are essentially randomly generated to pull you down and cause you to have to fight a mini boss of sorts, either a Hammer Bros or a Boomerang Bros, Fire Bros, you know, little guys with the helmets and have the little special extras, and you just have to jump on their head once and avoid their projectiles to get through. But that obviously slows your run down. So you want to get a no hands, what they call no hands run, where you get across the bridge due to RNG, and you don't have to fight any of these mini bosses, so it saves you a ton of time. And then obviously you want to try to get to Koopa's Bowser's castle as quickly as possible, and there are certain things that take time even after you've double warp whistled your way to the 8th world. There are things that take time to get through, including some airship / ground ship missions that you really can't. They're, you know, they scrollers. They scroll left to right, and you cannot go any faster than the scroller can go. At least until you get to the final area where there's a warp pipe, or not a warp pipe. There's a pipe that takes you to the mini boss. But what was discovered was later on is you can manipulate the RNG or the programming of the game to warp whistle your way into Zone 7 or World 7, and then go into the pipes and basically use the pipes so that you go down a fake pipe, and then that fake pipe jumps you through the rest of World 7 and through all of World 8 and basically puts you at Princess Peach. So you don't have to fight any... don't really have to fight any boss, to be honest. You just, like I said, you get to the first warp whistle, you go to the fort, you get the second warp whistle, you go to the warp 7, or World 7, you play through, I believe, one world, and then that leads you to the pipe area that's a bottom to top mission instead of a left to right mission, and then you exploit the programming in the game, like I said, and that takes you directly to Peach, and that ends the game. And that counts as a way to speed run the game legitimately. And the same thing, you can find the same thing in Super Mario Brothers 1, where you spawn a what is it? Not a piranha plant, it is a vine to go up. But because that takes time for the vine to grow, you can actually pause the game by going down a pipe to spawn you like you had originally. So we're going to skip over this part. This is the part that leads you to the Varia suit, or whatever the upgraded suit is. I tried for like 5 or 6 minutes to do this and unsuccessfully did it, so I'm just going to skip that. But getting back what I was saying in terms of speed running, you know, there's a couple portions in Mario 1 that they've learned to help cut down on time, but like as the game stands right now, at least until someone finds a Mario 3-esque, skip where you just basically skip over World 4 and go straight to Peach. Like the fastest time I think you can do that game in is like 4:25 or something, with all of the current exploits that they understand. I know I've talked about this before, in terms of speed running, but I think Metroid and some of the other games that haven't been fully blown to pieces, I think are the most interesting, because at least as far as I'm aware, in the Super Metroid run, you can sequence break that game to hell, but you cannot exploit the game to the point where, I'm Samus, I'm going to bomb my way into the wall and go directly to where Mother Brain is, without having to beat Kraid or beat Ridley or do anything else that's required in the game. So I think in a lot of cases I sort of appreciate those games more than I appreciate the people that spend hours and days trying to figure out a way around the program, essentially around the game is what I'm trying to get at. I mean, you don't want to play, you want to find the best way to beat the game, great. If that happens to be like in Pokemon, I think Pokemon Red's speedrun is like 5 minutes, and there's no legitimate way you can get from, all boys eventually leave home at some point to, congratulations on becoming the Pokemon champion in 5 minutes. It takes longer to walk with no encounters. It takes longer to walk to where, I wouldn't say necessarily where Brock is, but definitely by the time you get to Misty, it's taken longer to just walk to Misty, with no random battle encounters, than it takes for you to beat the game via this method where you exploit the code and it just shoots you to the Hall of Fame screen and you get the end credits. I know nobody really watches my stuff for the most part. I get like less than 10 views on my videos usually, with the exception of some of my videos just take off and I get a couple hundred. Um, but if anybody's actually listening to these videos this week, my brother Greg is doing a charity stream with his buddy JT on Twitch. If you go to YSub, I'm gonna have to actually look up how to spell that now. You're gonna have to give me a minute here while I play. WYSAUB. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they're going to be doing a charity stream. For, I think it's a 48-hour stream, but they do go to sleep at some point, so it's a total of, I think, 48 hours over 3 days instead of 48 hours straight. Because they do have jobs now that they're adults. So they start the stream at, say, 5, 6 o'clock on Friday. They stream a whole bunch into the evening, and then go to bed, wake up early the following morning, stream all day until late, and then they'll go to bed again briefly, and then they'll finish off the 48 hours on Sunday. Or roughly thereabouts. I don't know if they actually, legitimately stream for 48 total hours, or if they stream for something closer to, say, I don't know, 36 or 40 hours. That's not really the point of the charity stream. I mean, I get it, but it's difficult when you are one of, let's say 2 people, and you want to sort of stream together instead of just do, well, JT's going to stream for 12 hours, and then I'm going to stream for 12 hours, and then JT's going to come back and stream for 12 hours, and sort of go back and forth so you guys get to take breaks. But, yeah, I know that they will, JT will go get food or something, or they'll take a break and go get food. And Greg will do, or JT will do stuff by himself, or without the help of his co-host. But yeah, you should go there, like I said, YSOB, and donate money if you can, to help them reach their goal, whatever their goal is. I think their goal their first year was like, I want to make $100. Like, okay, that's easy. And then like their second year was like, oh, $500 or $1,000. And then now that they're all adults and they've got adult friends, it's much easier. Not that they're required to donate, but I think it's just easier because A, they have money, and B, their friends have money. That if they all donate $20, it's easier to get to a couple $100 a lot faster than, say, if you are relying on nobody that has money to donate, and you're trying to hit $500 and you've got essentially $1 to your name to spare or whatever. They do a good job, so that's why I wanted to promote them. If you happen to hear this before their stream this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which would, I believe, be the, let's see here, today's 1st, which is Wednesday, so 2nd, so 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I know I'll be watching, not because I want to, but because I want to make fun of my brother later. Every so often they say stupid shit, I just have to break my brother's balls because of it. Like, I think last year, JT had been talking a big game, because him and my brother in either a prior stream or prior charity thing. They had done a versus speed run. They did a split screen speed run of well, originally Super Metroid, which JT destroyed my brother at, but also so I didn't quite understand this puzzle at this point. What I gotta do is I gotta put my little my little Samus Rolly body in that hole there, but I'm thinking I gotta spawn the guys and then freeze them, which will allow me to jump up, but sometimes it's just a simple answer. But anyways, so they had played Donkey Kong Country 1, and my brother Greg's really good at Donkey Kong Country 1. Like, he's like really efficient at that game. And JT was talking mad shit about, well, you know, this is your game. I'm much better at Donkey Kong Country 2. I would destroy you in Diddy's Conquest. And my brother's like, okay. So after they did the Donkey Kong Country 1, they did the Donkey Kong Country 2 thing. Now, here's a problem. You may have been super good at this game, you know, back when you were a little kid, but my brother plays a ton of retro video games, and I'm pretty sure he had played Donkey Kong Country 2 more recently than JT did, because he didn't just beat JT, he spanked him. He spanked him hard because JT got caught on one of the bosses and ended up having to continue, which restarted his progress. Whereas my brother had gotten through, I think it was the one boss that's a like a crow, the crow's nest, and he had managed to beat that boss on his. Didn't exactly dominate him, but he beat him on his first go round, so he didn't have to use a continue and redo some difficult lead up levels, which helped to give him an advantage. And then as he got up to some of the more difficult levels like Toxic Tower, he didn't actually, I mean, he lost lives obviously, but he didn't lose lives to the point where like he was falling behind and had to continue. So like he's getting to K-roll at the end of the game, and JT's still like a whole zone away from Greg, and it was just kind of embarrassing. Not necessarily embarrassing, it was sort of funny to watch because he'd been talking such a big game about Donkey Kong Country 2, and Greg kind of spanked the shit out of him in that regard. I mean, it wasn't a complete and utter spanking in terms of like, you know, I think he was one zone behind by the time my brother had actually finished the game. And he was so far ahead, I think JT sort of gave up at a point. But so that might have also been a factor. If, say, if he had been a little bit closer, maybe he wouldn't have beat him by such a wide margin. But I was sort of expecting that speed run for either Greg to not do as well as he did, or them to sort of both be on the final boss at the same time, or roughly there, you know, JT maybe being a level or two behind Greg, and then them, you know, essentially as Greg's finishing off K-roll, he's also getting to K-roll, so it's not that big of a margin. But like I said, like he sort of at some point called off the dogs and was just like, yeah, I'm not gonna catch up to you, Greg. They did some other speed runs, but I don't think I think at a certain point, like, Greg had beaten him so badly at so many games that they just sort of started doing let's plays rather than, or cooperative plays. But then again, JT's got this, I wouldn't say he's got a weird taste in video games, but he's definitely playing games that are off the beaten path, which, you know, I don't know what to say about. I mean, like, what are you gonna do if you you know, you're playing sort of indie games. I mean, of course, Greg's not going to be as well versed, or I'll say myself, I'm not as well versed in indie games. So, like, if I were to go onto his stream and play some of the games that him or his friends or whatever have discovered, I'm not sure I would be very good at them, or even be adequate at them. So, I get it. Everybody's good at their own thing, Chris. I must say, this is probably one of my favorite songs from the Metroid series. I don't know if it's because I played a ton of Smash Brothers Melee, and this song was on one of the levels for what the story there is. But yeah, big fan of this one. I mean, everyone loves, first area of any game is usually very nostalgic for players, but really like this song overall. I don't mind the fact that you end up coming back here a whole bunch of times in order to, like, further progress the storyline, because a lot of shit is hidden. Well, both here in Criteria, they are, a lot of your upgrades are hidden there. So you end up going back through this area in order to progress and get to the next area where the major bosses are, which are Kraid and Ridley. Also, in the original version of Metroid 1, Kraid is not big. He is sort of one of the mini guys. Like, he's bigger than the guy I'm fighting right now, but he's definitely smaller than what Kraid becomes in the later games. So you sort of get in Metroid, Super Metroid, you don't realize, because obviously Metroid 2 doesn't have anything to do with Kraid or Ridley, at least in the original version. So when you fight like a what we would now call a mini Kraid, you fight a mini Kraid in Super Metroid. So you fight the mini Kraid, and you're like, and it pops like you've just beaten Kraid for real. Because, like I said, in the original Metroid, he's much smaller. So you fight this mini Kraid, you beat him, and he pops a bunch of health and missiles. Like, oh, you beat a boss. Here's your boss fountain to, replenish your health and missiles that you used up. And then you go into the next room and you actually fight Big Boy Kraid, like what every other Metroid Kraid looks like, which is this gigantic thing. And they did in this version retcon that so that you're fighting the big Kraid in this version of the game. So we're gonna have to bring that back and do this again. Ta-da, we did it. Aren't we cool? That was another thing. If you ever play any future Metroid games or play this Metroid game, you have to watch out for well, these guys are annoying because they take a ton of damage, and they do a ton of damage. So it's almost worth just spending the missiles on them. Just to get rid of them. There's another one there. These guys are a little easier later in the game when you get Wave Beam. Because Wave Beam goes through walls so that you can actually stay safe while continuing to hit them, I guess.